Today, we're going to talk about how influencer marketing will change by 2030. I'm Justin Moore. Welcome to Creator Wizard, your step-by-step guide to the business of being a creator. In this video, you're going to learn common themes that persist regardless of the rise and fall of social platforms, lessons from the last 10 years of social media and how that can inform the future, and how influencers can set themselves up for professional longevity. Before we get started, if you want tips on how to get more brand deals, click the link in the description to join our free newsletter, and you'll also get a downloadable brand deal pricing checklist. So today we're going to be speaking with Dom Burch, who is the co-founder of Salts Huby, which helps brands launch innovative pop-up retail, experiential, and influencer marketing programs. Welcome, Dom.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for jumping on with us today. So we got a fun one today. So we're going to be talking about the future, pontificating about what influencer marketing is going to look like in the years to come. So let's jump right into it. So, there have been some pretty high profile social platforms that have fizzled out in the last number of years. I would say maybe the best example is like Vine, perhaps, but more recently, TikTok has been in the news for maybe potentially getting shut down in the US or elsewhere. So talk a little bit about, why do you think it's so difficult for some creators to diversify their businesses, even with some of these, historical examples, right? I'm not really trying to drag anyone or anything, but it doesn't really seem like there's a ton of urgency from a lot of folks to needing to get their email list going or these other activities that might, insulate them from some of this risk.
Okay, so you don't have to go that much further back in time to remember when everyone was just called a YouTuber. So influencer wasn't even really a thing. And so I think back to the content creators that I was working with back then, and they always had one eye on the future. What's coming around the corner? Where else do I need to be present and relevant, ready to go if it takes off, if it becomes a thing? And YouTube might have been their home, it might have been their hub, it might have been where they crafted their skill. And also YouTube was a really tough place to succeed, right? Everyone thought that it was one of those channels where, I just do a channel, I just do tongue-in-cheek funny videos and suddenly I'll become famous. And what I learned from working with the first generation of YouTubers was just how diligent they were, the ones that succeeded, how they had that X factor of really, really researching what they were doing, painstakingly wanting to improve every metric. So, how many people watched that video? How many people stayed in till the end? How many comments did I get? What are other YouTubers doing that's helping drive calls to action? Okay, they're signaling that you should, thumbs up down below and don't forget to leave a comment. And I'm going to call out some of my audience. But then as soon as Instagram came along, as soon as other channels that allowed them to invent themselves again somewhere else, they were thinking of this kind of hub and spoke. They were thinking about, how do I use my engine room of YouTube? How do I pull people in from somewhere else? And how do I take the skill and the craft I've learned here and apply it in 6 seconds on Vine or in 30 seconds on Instagram or whatever? So I think the best content creators are always healthily paranoid, thinking through not just where's the sparkly new toy. I think that's how brands think, right? So brands go, there's this new thing called jelly. Right, we need to be on there today. And it's completely irrelevant for, Walmart in the UK as it was at the time. And I say this through bitter experience, right? Because who went on to jelly in sort of week one as a brand? I did, because I was like, something new. And I want to be the first. And I want to be written about as the brand that have already figured out jelly. But it was a false move, right? It wasn't the best, and also it ended up disappearing. So it was kind of bad for two reasons. So right. I think, if you're a brilliant producer of content and you've honed your craft on one particular channel, if it makes sense and a new opportunity opens up, then it's remiss of you not to explore that opportunity and to consider, how could I do what I do? But it's got to feel right to your type of content. It's got to connect. Is your audience there too? And as brands, that's how we think. We ought to be thinking, who is the influencer I'm working with? The reason I want to work with them is because they're better at talking to my customers than I am, or they're better at telling the story of my product or my brand than I am. and their audience relationship is even stronger than the relationship I have with my customers. But there's got to be a shared purpose. That connection has to be one that's true. And I think the same is true of influencers or content creators looking over the horizon at what's the next thing that's coming. Are the people that they want to talk to there? And are the brands that they want to employ them, are their customers there? And if the answers to those questions are not sure or yet to be decided, then invest the appropriate amount of time in exploring that opportunity.
How do you, I mean, that's hard. Like, how do you, is there some sort of like quantification or I don't even some sort of subjective qualification of how you can measure when is the tipping point? Like, when do I invest the resources as a brand or a creator to actually start? Because there's an opportunity cost of not making content on the current platform that you're successful on, right? And so, like, how do you make that call as a brand or even a creator to try to figure out like where to focus your time?
I think that is a tricky call. So I have the benefit of being a medium adopter, right? I'm never at the cutting edge of technology or social or being cool, as you can tell. So I'm sort of in that zone where just through seeing something over and over to the point of submission, you kind of go, whether I want to be on Twitter, 12 years ago or not, so many people are talking about it, I'm going to have to go and figure it out whether I like it or not. So I think there become those kind of tipping points. I suppose the red flag is, just because you're hearing about it, go and explore it. Go there and have a look. There's not a huge opportunity cost in exploring it and being there. The other thing is grab your brand, right? Grab your personal brand on that new space just in case. So I'm fortunate I've got Dom Burch everywhere because I'm old enough to be around that when Gmail was just becoming a thing and Twitter was just becoming and that I could grab me on those platforms. So I think it makes good sense to be there. It's very, very hard for anyone coming up with a new idea, a new brand, a new company, a new idea, a new platform to actually own the territory on spaces. So sometimes it makes sense to get there early. But I mean, honestly, I think it is a really tough call for influencers to make that judgment. But I would just say, look, it's the same with a brand, right? When I ran a team of 50 people at Walmart, we had to deliver a big number commercially every year, like a big number, millions and millions of dollars every year. And we had to do that under constraint. So you had to invest at least 20% of your time thinking about innovation, thinking about things that might mature into making money in the future. Because the reality was all the things you were doing were gradually deteriorating, but it could only be at that 20%. And then you have to kind of take the judgment that if you try 10 things, only 5 will work. And the 5 that work, only half of those will deliver the kind of number that you expect them to deliver. So you have to almost have in your mindset that if you're after, let's just say, $10,000, you have to find like 4 times the equivalent of opportunity in order to be able to get that $10,000. And that's in a sort of sales environment. But it was like almost a life truism that, you can explore lots of things. Not all of them are going to come off. No one could have planned for the pandemic. I mean, I know government should have done, but they didn't. No one could have really have expected the consequences that have played out in the last 6 months, right? So there are always going to be these headwinds, and there are going to be things that you do yourself or life will change. You'll have kids, you'll move house, a brand will come along that wants to work with you, and then they'll disappear. So I think it makes good sense for people to be almost in that mindset of whatever I'm doing that's working has got to be the engine room. That's 75-80% of what I do. But I have to give myself the capacity to be looking over the horizon. And it is a investment in me, an investment in my product or an investment in my company to be looking to innovate. And then I need to be, I would say of the 10 things you're trying, like a couple of them, let them be flyers. Let them be things that, who knows, because occasionally you'll get lucky. Right. But, the other 8 that you're looking at, or 5, whatever, need to be a bit more, it's with a hunch, but with the experience of, I've seen this work before. There's enough in this that makes me think this is worth some investment. And then the other thing I would say, which of course, you're brilliant at, and the entire network that you've built is all about, is talk to your peers, right? I sense there's this sort of view sometimes that I need to everything I find out in the world, I need to keep in and not tell anyone about. And the thing I used to love about going to South by Southwest or going to a conference with other social media managers was this sense of a rising tide floats all boats, right? There's enough out there that if you told everybody you know, everything you know, the reality is you'll also find out something from them that you didn't know and you weren't expecting. Mm-hmm. And if you're open to learning and you're willing to share, then you will find out or reinforce your view or challenge your view in such ways that is really enriching and it's inspiring. Mm-hmm. And it's, and it's challenging, and sometimes it will make you feel a little bit uneasy. So I would really encourage content creators to find a network of people that they feel confident enough to ask the silly questions of, but also confident enough to say, this is my hunch, this is where I see the world going, this is how I see this platform developing. What do you think? And that could be as easy as putting it out there on Twitter or writing a blog or, ringing somebody up.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I think there's been kind of this resurgence of creators owning their audience, whether it's these, startups like ConvertKit or something, who are allowing folks to very easily capture emails and, have lead magnets. And I think there is more of an appreciation for, owning that audience on any social media platform. Let's face it, you just don't own them, right? You can't market to them. I mean, you can do brand deals and you can talk to them, but the percentage of your organic reach is decreasing by the day on pretty much every platform, right? But the interesting thing, I think, is that back in the day, I felt as though, I'm curious what your thoughts are here, is that I feel as though brands were maybe a little bit more flexible and excited about being able to, when they partner with a creator or a blogger, let's say, being able to have that blogger do an email blast to their list too, let's say 20,000 people on their email list or whatever. And that was like an exciting part of the partnership. But I feel as though influencer marketing has developed to a point where it's so much more formalized, where it has to be one Instagram post, one Facebook post, one Twitter post, so it's like the scope of work is fixed and finite for all 10 partners in the program, right? And so the ability to like do an email blast, maybe if one out of the 10 partners has a large email list, is not that exciting anymore. And that seems very strange to me, that it's developed to a point where brands aren't seeing the value in doing some of these other. Maybe it's not a public face, right? Because an email list is not a public facing thing, but the exposure used to be exciting. What are your thoughts on that development?
I think you're right. I think it's become very mechanical, and I think it's probably partly because of the way that when it became a bigger thing and it went above the radar and the budget started to increase, different folks in large organizations, in marketing teams, started to take an interest, right? And then they wanted to know, how do I put that social media thing that you're doing over there discreetly? How do I put that into the campaign planner? And how do I allocate the budget to it? And I'm used to working in TVRs, so we're going to reach this many people and this audience, and we're going to spend a digital campaign on Google, and it's going to get this click-through rate and blah, 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 blah. It became very mechanical and scientific. And unfortunately, I think that the kind of PR folk and the social media purists from back in the day who understood that things were slightly more amorphous, right? They were more organic and more natural. My instinct when I was working with content creators, the YouTubers back in the day, was to say, look, you do what you do brilliantly. I'm trying to connect through you. I'm trying to rent your audience for the purpose of this campaign. So I'm going to get out of the way. Here's the thing, the product, the event, the campaign. You interpret that, do it the way that you would do it, and what's the best way to do that? And they'll go, well, it might be a YouTube campaign, but we're going to do a bit of YouTube, something on Twitter, and also I'm going to do a blog about it, and then I'm going to blast my audience, and I'm going to get them to enter this competition. And can you give me some free product? Yeah, I'll send you some free products. In fact, why don't you just go into store and buy whatever you want to buy, and then just send me the bill? And so it was kind of like, it became exciting. And it was like, let them be expert at what they do. I mean, the reason they'd come to us or we'd spotted them was because they were brilliant at what they did. And 90% of what they did had nothing to do with brands. It was just them creating great content. And so I think we've lost some of that. I think some of the mechanics that have gone in, and it was because it was hard to scale, I think. It was hard to scale those relationships, those one-on-ones, that level of trust. And also the level of expertise in brands started to deplete, ironically, as more and more people entered the kind of social media marketing world for brands. Their level of expertise probably went down. And so they needed to rely on process and structure in order to be able to just get the job done. My preference still would be find great people, trust them to do the job that they can do brilliantly, give them a brief, give them a budget, and the results will take care of themselves.
So what do you think the next 5 years holds? I mean, if the current trend continues, and I mean, let's face it, like, I think there is a feeling as though an average user who scrolls their Instagram feed sees a ton of ads, sees a ton of not only sponsored, posts from creators, but like ad load, like sponsored, like brands, putting ads in terms of the overall inventory. Do you think that we're going to be reaching a point of like ad fatigue from the general consumer, or like, is there going to be a pullback in terms of the amount of creators and influencers that people are partnering with, or what is your sense for what that might look like in the next couple of years?
So I have to remind myself when I'm not feeling particularly optimistic that I am a glass half full kind of person, right? And I remember writing a blog probably 7 or 8 years ago and sort of imagining what the future of influencer or content creation was going to be like, right? And I was thinking back to the days where young people who have grown up with YouTube and Instagram and social media are never going to go back to the old way of consuming media. If they get their news from people like them and they get their credibility and trust from their network, then why are they going to suddenly go back to watching that really boring news program that their parents watch, right? So everything's going to have to adapt with them. What I hadn't figured was that people like, and let's not talk politics, but people like Donald Trump have become expert, very old people who know how to talk to other audiences and influence through social media. So you've got the good and the bad prospect that in the future, more and more people are going to be understanding of this space of how you influence one another. I think the other thing for me would be that channels are only as good as the content on them. So people choose to hang out on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok because the content's engaging, it's relevant, it's got people that they want to see, they want to participate either through comments or sharing or creating their own content, even at a low level. So I think if you get to any point where there's so much advertising or there's so much promoted posts or the content starts to deteriorate, then something else will pop up, right? I mean, TikTok wasn't a thing 2 years ago. And the proliferation now of TikTok and others and Instagram and Reels and all those kind of things. My daughters are 11 and 14. Everything is TikTok. Dad, did you know that such and such? Where'd you hear that? TikTok. So it's not just people creating fun little musical videos. They're getting their news, they're getting their false news, they're getting all sorts of theories coming out of TikTok. So I don't know, I'm optimistic that it's very easy, isn't it, for us as a generation who have grown up with something for the last 10, 15 years to kind of look cynically at the future and go, oh, it's not how it used to be, right? And it just reminds me of, I used to go to this music festival over here, which is kind of like our version of, it's Glastonbury, like this sort of world famous music festival. And it started out in the 70s, and a friend of mine's mother went to the first ever Glastonbury where there were like 1,100 people in a field with one stage. And when I went in the mid-90s, I thought it was the most amazing thing. But there will be people that will tell you it's not like it used to be. It's very commercial these days. And yet in 2020, all right, they didn't take it this year because of COVID, but it's still a thriving, adapting, interesting, vibrant thing. But fundamentally, it's still people stood in a muddy field in England listening to music. But it's changed, it's moved and adapted. So I'm optimistic that the platforms and the channels will move and shift. There will be new players and there'll be new things that we can't imagine now, but I think fundamentally they're driven by audiences wanting to hang out there and wanting to participate. I
mean, I love talking about kind of these common themes and things that are kind of universal regardless of what platforms creators are publishing on, or the content on. And if you're really focused as a creator on fundamentally understanding your audience, figuring out where they're hanging out, what they want to listen to, what they want to hear. So a lot of those really interesting things. Are there any universal truths that you think are kind of like commonly accepted now with respect to influencer marketing that won't be true in 5 years, let's say?
Well, I always try to put my brand hat on, so if I'm the purchaser of this, what is it I need in order to work consistently with an influencer content creator, right? So I think one of the things that brands find really, really hard is making visual moving content themselves, right? Whether that is YouTube, TikTok, a GIF, anything that is visual and moving, I think brands really, really struggle to do that. And they struggle because they want to do it in a way that's so controlled that it becomes anodyne, and they don't have the budget to be creating TV spots, right? So give a brand $1 million and a brilliant director and a team of 50 people and an amazing set and a location. Yeah, of course, they can create award-winning, amazing commercials, right? But give them a small budget and a constraint of time and a product or a campaign or a brief, and it's really, really hard for them to do that. Content creators, that is your being, that is your whole way of life, and you have honed it and you are brilliant at doing it. So I think the true, for me, the truth is there are always going to be content creators out there who aren't conflicted by being inside the brand, aren't suffocated by the constraint of having to conform to the way that they create content or the way that they think their audience think. And are just like grounded in the reality of they are the audience, like they are like their followers and their fans. So I think that will remain true. I think the skill, though, for content creators is it's a crowded place out there now. Everyone is a content creator. Like both my kids want to be TikTokers when they grow up. Like when they grow up, TikTok might not even be a thing. And it's like, well, if you want to be a TikToker, what are you doing today to hone your craft? Like how many videos have you made today? And what are are you looking for different music, different routines? Are you creating the routine rather than just mimicking somebody else's routine? Of course, they won't be TikTokers probably, but the idea that there's a shortcut, the idea that there's a quick route to fame or there's a quick route to success is a fallacy, right? It's not to say that people don't occasionally make it by chance, but if you think back to Pop Idol or X Factor or one of those kind of reality shows, you go back 10, 15 years ago, everyone wanted to be on a reality show because they saw it as the fast track to fame and fortune. Right. In truth, the really, really good performers were already selected to be on those kind of shows and programs. And they had been performing for years and years and years. And then they were given the support they needed in order to succeed. And then even then, only the 1% got to the top, right? So harsh reality is, I think, most people aren't going to be in the 1%. But if you think about how I used to do the sales approach of like that 80-20 thing, you can get into the top 20%, right? So you've got like a 1 in 5 chance of being in the top 20%. And that top 20% might not be the most famous. It might not be the most celebrity. It might not be going to all the best parties. But that is an area where you can earn a living, where you can do some amazing work. You can meet some great people, but it's going to take energy and effort, and you have to be consistent and you've got to be on it. It's a job. And like any job, you can be in that top 20% if you work hard and you're willing to learn and you're willing to adapt. And I think of it like golf, right? I play golf. I'm not very good at golf. But I found out recently that if you can kind of break 100 on a round, then you're doing all right. If you can break 90, you're actually doing better than most amateur golfers. I'm never going to be Tiger Woods, right? Of course I'm not. But if I can get into that kind of top 20% of amateur golfers, then I should be pretty happy with that. And, that's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, one interesting comment an agency made to us a couple years ago was that I would say that description of like top 20%, I think my wife and I are kind of squarely in that. We don't have like millions upon millions of followers, but we have a solid following. And this agency person said to us that my wife and I are in the sweet spot, which is that we have, a solid following, a solid, reach, but we don't our pricing isn't so exorbitant that most brands can't afford us, right? So it's like there is this sweet spot, and I think an advantage to just being solid, right? Like you dependable, solid, have a so that was just a really interesting comment. And the other really interesting trend, I'm curious your thoughts on this too, is that a lot of brands, have in-house influencer marketing managers now, which is not a thing that, that wasn't really a thing maybe 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, right? So I think influencer marketing has developed to a point where most brands think that it needs to be a permanent part of the overall media mix, and with respect to brands not being able to create the content themselves, I'm wondering if as more and more of this expertise gets in-housed at the brand, that another shift that might happen is content creation, where they understand, because you've seen a lot of these kind of, especially direct-to-consumer brands, are much more savvy at creating content, and they have folks in-house who understand how to talk to their audience, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And so I'm wondering if you may see this trend towards employee influencers, people in-house at brands who are actually, you've seen some interesting work at like Macy's and some other retailers who have done that, where they've actually like made videos, made content with their employees. So I'm wondering what you think of that trend and if that will continue.
I think in certain segments, yes, I can see that. So I think in retail, particularly fast fashion, there's a retailer over here, Misguided. I think they have some stores in the US as well. A large in-house team, hardly any agency support. They do a lot of work with influencers, but they have regular influencers. And actually there's a TV program at the moment that's running, which is kind of like a fly-on-the-wall documentary. And the people featured on that fly-on-the-wall documentary are all Misguided people. And their sweet spot is girls who are probably 16 to 21, fast fashion, partying, want to look good, down-to-earth kind of people. And the people who work there look like the customer. And I think when the people who work for a brand also look and feel like their customer, then it makes absolute sense for them to be kind of the influencer too. I think where you struggle is where brands, are employing people who aren't really like their customer. And I think that's where the disconnect was. And if I'm honest, when I was at Asda, which is, until recently part of Walmart, or still part of Walmart today, but might not be in the future, this is a low cost value retailer, kind of dollar store, but not, maybe just one up from dollar store. And so the people working in the head office were disconnected from their customer because they had more money than them. And of course they shopped at Asda, but they probably didn't until they started working at Asda. So you needed to therefore work with people who were more like your real customer. Because then, I used to say to people, if you're going to create video content and look down the lens, and you're not connecting with your audience, like they'll see it, they'll smell BS a mile away. So I think for some brands, I can see that making sense, but I think the in-house team need to be like the people they're talking to, or they just need to be absolutely brilliant at it. So some of the betting brands over here, there's one called Paddy Power, and their whole brand persona, they've just got it so nailed that anything can happen and they can react to it right then in a moment. Like our Prime Minister Boris Johnson could say something silly and within a second, Paddy Power will jump on it. Or, the score of a big soccer match will change quickly and then they'll be straight onto it. So I think it kind of is brand dependent, but I would say they are in the 1% club. The brands who are going to be able to nail this without external influencers, content creators, helping them do that job, I think are in the minority. And it used to drive me nuts when I used to go to conferences and it was always Red Bull this and Red Bull that. It's like,
right.
Red Bull's like the outlier. Red Bull's not even an energy drink company now. They're just a production company, like a sports production company that happen to sell an energy drink. In the future they'll go, do you remember like a Kodak? Do you remember Kodak used to be what did Red Bull start out as? What was it before it became a media conglomerate,
Right. Well, the argument, I think, could be made that it's much cheaper to develop that type of expertise yourself as a brand than constantly renting other people's audiences, right? I mean, I guess that's advertising in general, but for those brands that are able to crack it, and maybe that's your point, is that it's hard to crack it, it's hard to hit that, strike that tone and not
I would say,
like you're trying too hard.
Yeah, and I'd say the other thing, don't forget that brands turnover of people in a marketing team, particularly now, right? You know, I was at Asda for 14 years. That's not typical anymore. So the turnover of people, both within an organization moving from one team to another as they develop their skills, as they learn, as they get promoted, as they start managing other teams, but also just the fact that people move around in their careers. And so people working in digital, people working in marketing, people working in influencer, you know, frankly, if you've got a great relationship as a content creator with somebody, you might be following them around their career as much as you will be staying within the brand that you know them through. And so I would remind people that, you know, dust off the whole Carnegie book of how to win friends and influence people. Put credit in the bank with those relationships, because who knows where they'll end up. Some of them will become marketing directors and VPs of, you know, advertising. So stick with the people. But it's also just the reality that in-house teams are always going to have to be refreshed. Content creators might be the constant, you know, you might be the one that knows the brand better than them, which is why agencies and providers of creative content exist. You know, sometimes ad agencies stick with a retailer for 15, 20 years because they almost know the company better than the teams that are managing them.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. One little, you're totally right about turnover. I mean, it's just, especially on the agency side, like it just seems like every 2-3 years, like people are out, you know. And one habit that I started maybe 5 years ago was any time that I saw a contact name from the brand directly, maybe I was working through an agency or as the, you know, I saw the signatory on the contract was like some VP at the brand or something, I immediately added them on LinkedIn, and I'd be like, hey, I saw that you were the signatory on this deal that we're doing through your agency. I just want to say I'm so excited to partner with you. Something like that, right? And like literally, even, this is so bizarre, but like if we would send like a Google document of like our captions or whatever to the brand, you would see the brand manager commenting like, oh, change this caption here. And I'd be like, oh, that's the brand manager. Let me go find them on LinkedIn. You know? And so like, but those do just that little effort to like familiarize yourself with who is involved with the project goes a long way. Cause like you said, all these people move on to new jobs, and then I can ping them on, hey, LinkedIn, great, congratulations on this new role. And then that has led into numerous new partnerships doing that type of thing. So is there any other things like that, you know, you could advise creators should be doing now to kind of like, you know, ensure down the line that they're going to continue to be able to, you know, get deal flow and pad their brand deal pipeline and things like that?
So definitely what you said, put in that extra effort, right? So connect with as many people in a relevant way as you can. Make what you do memorable, and remember that it's a human interaction. So if you can do things that help that person look good in their organization, then they're going to remember how you made them feel, right? I remember doing it the other way around as well. So with some of the influencers who were being paid, you know, big money for what I could, you know, had to defend on the one hand, where people are going, how much we pay them just to make a 2-minute video? I was like, yeah, but it's an amazing video. And we're buying their audience, by the way, and right? But I would drop them like a bunch of flowers or something. I would send them a handwritten note and say thank you. I'd private message them after when it went live and go, oh my God, have you seen the reaction? And I've read these comments, and that comment was really, really good. So I would do that outwardly because I wanted the best relationship. I wanted to be the best brand they worked with, so that they would then go the extra mile when they have the choice of working with us or somebody else. They go, no, I want to work with Dom.
Yep.
And when I work with Dom, I want to make sure it's brilliant because I love working with Dom. Similarly, the other way around, you know, I've had influencers send me, you know, a handwritten Christmas card out of the blue, and we hadn't worked together for about 3 months, just saying, I just want to let you know we both appreciate the work you gave us this year. Like, it, you know, it's made a massive impact, and we really enjoy the work that we do with you. And that isn't the case with everybody we work with. And it sort of worked both ways. And I just thought, to me, it was just like, just have a touch of class, because that touch of class will go such a long way. And it might not be visible immediate, and it might not pay back immediate with another assignment, but it's there. And I know with that, you know, particular influencer that I'm talking about, if I get the opportunity again to need somebody like them for a brand that was similar to the one I worked with before, they're top of the list. And they're not necessarily the cheapest, and they're not the most expensive, but they're in that range where you kind of go, I know I'm going to get good value out of them, and they'll and occasionally just chucking in an extra tweet, or maybe doing a video that isn't brand led but features your product in there because they can. And and it was interesting with that particular couple, they went out and bought a load of merchandise from the brand that I was working with independently, and just because they loved it, they ended up falling in love with the brand. And even that was like an interesting touch, because it was kind of like going, we don't want you to pay for it. We don't want it for free. We've gone and bought it. I just want you to know we've bought these items and we think they're great.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like I've definitely found that even when we work through our agency with other creators, like the people who are really difficult, when it's like every little thing, it's like, oh, can you tweak this caption? Oh, no. It's, like even making a small little edit, can you cut out these 10 seconds or whatever? Like the creators who fight tooth and nail for everything, it just makes me not want to work with them anymore, because it's like, it just makes it so much more difficult, right? And the creators who are just understand that there is this kind of push and pull, relationship when it comes, it's a business partnership, right? If I'm going to be paying you to make content for me, I expect you to understand that there are going to need to be some edits being made, right? So there are very simple things that I think creators can be doing that will behoove them down the line to getting more business. And I think a lot of people are very short-sighted about it, and they don't understand that when you, like, I tell people this all the time, more than 50% of my wife and I personally, our business, our revenue is repeat business. It's past brands or past agencies coming back to us over and over and over because they know that we're dependable and that we're good to work with, right? And so I think a lot of creators can, will definitely do well to understand that and try to be more flexible because they'll make more money down the line. So anyways, Dom, it was so great to chat with you. So how can people find out more about Salts Huby or get in touch with you?
Easiest thing to do is just, my name's Dom Burch, Domburch. Google that and you'll stumble into me somewhere or other.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. So nice to speak to you, Justin. Take care.
So I hope you enjoyed the interview. I would love for you to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be alerted every time I upload a new video. And please leave a comment down below if you have any questions or future video ideas and you are one step closer to becoming a creator wizard. Don't forget, if you want insider tips on how to grow your business as a creator and diversify your income, click the link in the description to join our free newsletter. You'll get exclusive videos, worksheets, and insights on the influencer marketing landscape, access to special product discounts, first look at upcoming courses, and more.